One of my favorite things to do as a painter is to explore new products. And I'm trying out the opaque watercolors, which are very much like gouache. They're made by Fumui. And this particular palette is a stunning collection of colors. So let me walk you through what I did. I decided to use kind of a monochromatic approach to the feathers. So each of the feathers will take one of the colors out of the palette, and then together they'll make kind of this loose collection. My first feather was a little bit tight, so what I learned is add a little more water so that they behave a lot more like traditional watercolor. They're opaque, but the more water you add, the more translucent. So here what I did is I started with just a wet outline or area of the feather that I wanted the paint to spread, and then I could go in and drop in and charge in the color and really get that wet on wet effect. It was still not quite as wet as I expected, so you'll see I can keep adding as I go. But I'm getting those nice soft lost and found edges, which is great. And then I can pull out that center vein. It was a little bit wet. I'm getting the opposite effect. Where I want it to be wet, it wasn't, and not. It's just that they behave slightly different than traditional watercolors, so I'm getting used to it as I go, and that's why I'm creating this kind of practice piece, just using the feathers. So I'm going back to the wet on wet areas where I want it to be wet, and I can come back and add that vein later. This collection of feathers are from the red-shouldered hawk, which I have in my neighborhood, and was inspired to capture them as my practice piece. The really nice thing about having opaque watercolors is if I want to layer on top of, I don't have to worry about preserving that translucency. So I can go in with lighter colors on top of dark and it will actually cover, which is pretty nice. It gives you kind of the best of all worlds, the translucency when you want it and the opaqueness. I'm really trying to use these paints a lot like watercolor, traditional watercolors. So I'm adding a lot of water, I'm blending them, I'm layering them, and using all my standard techniques. And I'm getting pretty good results. So you can see when I don't have water down, the paint comes on very assertively. So I'm just adding a little water to invite some of that paint to spread. And again, this is just a matter of me learning what the properties of the paint is going to do. And the more you use something like this, the more you get used to it and the more control you have. But I'm kind of enjoying this mix of I'm learning, oh yes, it did what I expected. And that's a fun part of the process, I find. So here you can see by just adding that water, I can get that soft edge. And then now that it's drier at the top, I can go back in to put that vein back in. And then I've switched to another color. Even though it's monochromatic, it's still just a shade of the gray. So I just wanted to give it a little bit of interest for not just one note kind of a feather. Here I can add a little bit more dimension. I did really enjoy that I was getting these hard and soft lines just through using the one color, so I don't want to go crazy and have it be like a rainbow, especially with the red-shouldered hawk. It is primarily a few colors. I'm going to kind of go outside of that palette just for fun, but each of the feathers I think is quite nice just being somewhat monochromatic. So for my next feather, I went ahead and did the same effect where I added the water down first so that I can invite those soft blurry edges which would echo the feather itself. And then with the same effect, I can go on top and get the finer line. And I love painting feathers. I've done another video of it with some peacock feathers, but they're just very relaxing and fun. I think I mentioned they were mesmerizing, and I think that still holds true. As I'm doing this voiceover, I can hear in the background the actual hawk is flying by, and it's like the whole neighborhood can hear him. I'm pretty much getting him to visit us every day, him or her. In fact, there was a pair of them flying by, and when I walked the dog, they came down really low, which was pretty exciting. So here I'm just using a small brush to flare out some fine lines. So I'm just pulling some of that wet paint out for just those very soft little feathery marks. But I do see I need a little more crispness on top so that it's not all soft and fuzzy. So I'm just going in with more paint on my brush and going into the drier areas to get that hard line. And I think the juxtaposition of the hard and the soft is really what I'm always stressing or attempting to do in painting. Same with values, those dark darks and those super light lights, and that broad range, breadth of value. Together, this variety will really make your painting strong. For this last feather, I did the same thing with the wet down, and you could see through practice, I know the amount of paint to put down to get that right spread. And here's where I'm kind of going away from the natural palette, and I'm using kind of purple tones, but the whole palette is very muted, as you can see from my swatches. So I think it's fun. It also makes your brain work a little harder because you have to interpret which color would be a good substitute for something in nature, and you have to think about a medium tone and a dark tone, so it does become a very good value study. So here I'm just seeing how they lift off, and I do get a pretty nice lift from it, which is, again, really nice. I've really enjoyed these paints. I highly recommend them. In fact, I think I still have a discount code, which I'll add to the description if you're interested in getting your own set. And I guess while I'm putting the discount code there, I should mention I'm also using the Fumui sable brushes. And while they're probably not accurately described as sable for the price, I can't imagine. The whole set I think goes for around $40, where typically a sable brush, a single brush, would be $40. But I think the important thing is that they behave very similar. They do hold water nicely, they get their form back, and they were pretty fun to work with. In fact, I've been using them now for about a month exclusively, and I've enjoyed the range I got out of this 9-brush set. So I would also recommend them. So here I just pulled out a few of those fine lines, again using the small brush, and now I can go in when the base is drier and add that more high contrast detail. And I like the effect of the multiple tones, even though it is kind of monochromatic. So I'm adding here that softer gray color, just again for some variety, so that it's not so one note. And I think it also helps, even though it's not a true composition, looking across all of the feathers, it's nice that they have some things in common. And you'll often hear me say you have to look across your composition and discover what's needed to help balance it. And that's, what I'm doing here, even though it's just for practice. It's good to practice that as well. And I think one of the things that makes me enjoy painting feathers so much is it is this variety, the soft blends, the hard lines, switching brushes out, going from big and loose to fine and detailed. It's, you get to explore everything with one subject matter. And I think, things really start to come alive as you're finishing up. So these details, the darkest darks, and, where can you enhance something, the structure of the actual feather by adding these details is exciting. Right, it's exciting to paint. I don't know if it's coming across exciting as a demonstration, but it is something that I do enjoy. I also wanted to show this video in real time. Often I speed up the videos just so that you can see the whole painting if you're painting along. But for this one, I kept in real time so that you could see the attention I'm putting to each of the strokes. I think if you do a lot of tutorials and watch a lot of things, it is hard to know what is the correct rhythm. And you need to find your own rhythm, of course, with each stroke you make. But a lot of times you'll see my brush kind of hover over before I put it down, because my brain is processing where does the next mark need to be thoughtful and not just slap something down. And don't judge yourself on others either. You take as much time as you need or go as quickly as you want to enjoy the painting you're doing and to get the results you're looking for. And I think when you watch a demonstration, you can't tell that the artist is looking across the layout to decide balance and next color option and mixing the paint and how much water are you adding. And those are very critical things to enhance your skills or to create wonderful works. Doing work like this, I think, is fun because, I'm enjoying this process. As you can see, I just charged in this green and it did exactly what I wanted it to do, as opposed to the feather to the left of it, which, I didn't know exactly how much pigment to put down, but that's a great takeaway. So the next time I use these paints, I'll have that experience. I also think it's interesting to look back at this as I'm doing the voiceover and realize I started out really tight with that first feather on the left, and as I've progressed, my natural inclination to be very loose and painterly is coming across. It was just a matter of how do these paints work and what do I need to do to get them to produce the type of work I'm looking for. But as I'm wrapping, I hope you found this one helpful. I would really love to know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. What type of videos do you enjoy? What do you want to learn from? I really want to be able to help you. And I enjoy knowing you're out there and hearing what you think. Whether it's good or bad, it helps me learn. So I do appreciate you and the time it takes for you to watch me produce something, and I hope then you try it or you learn something from it, because that would be my goal for sharing and making the videos. As I'm building my channel, I do appreciate if you haven't yet subscribed, please do, and that way you get alerted when I do a new video, which I try to do every couple of days to keep producing work that you find of value. To recap as I finish, this exercise was to explore the opaque watercolors, and I chose to do a collection of red-shouldered hawk feathers so that I could test out the paints against super soft, watery, blurry edges and the sharper, more detailed lines. And the feathers provided a great platform to do just that. When I began, I was learning how the paints work, and the more I use them, obviously the point of the lesson, the more control I found I had and was pleased with the results. I would encourage you all to go outside of your comfort zone and switch things up every now and again.